The issue is that what the ANCAP and revolutionaries and radicals don't tell you is that if we dismantle all the system, I don't think anyone appreciates that it's a goddamn miracle that we have the institutions that we have. We're pretty fucking lucky. And the idea that like some sort of weird idealistic version of like anarchy or communism or any of this like weird shit is going to be the solution seems to not really be borne out in any historical or like well, not present. Maybe if we went like anarcho-primitivism and we just became monkeys in the trees, maybe then we'd be happy. But most of us would die, and we all know that any of the fuckers watching this shit right now, you're for sure dead. We're all too fat and slow to live the anarchy capitalist lifestyle. My favorite quote is distrust, question tradition, but distrust the obvious. And a lot of radicals and anarchists are in love with the obvious and not distrusting it enough.
Hey, just real quick, if you want to take me up on that debating of that, since you want to use your whole outro statement to shit on my ideology, I'll take you up on that anytime.
Not just your ideology, in fairness. It would also be radicals who want to dismantle and anarcho-communists. So.
Yeah, well, there's only one ANCAP on the panel, and there's only one anarchist on the panel, so just letting you know. Just letting you know, if you want to defend all of those accusations at some point, you can. I was promised memes and entertainment, and I am getting neither right now. I don't want you. I want you to know how angry I am.
I've got to.
Jesus Christ! Hold on. Pause.
There we go. Have you ever heard of the Loch Ness Monster?
Yes, I have.
Did you know that in June he supports gay rights? He supports gay rights the rest of the year too. Just in June. He gets really excited about it.
Nice. Also, there's no such thing as gay rights, only human rights.
Based.
It's just like name a right that gay people name a right that gay people have that or should have that straight people don't have or shouldn't have.
So nobody should be discriminated against based on the people that they choose to have personal relationships with.
I don't care if people are discriminated against. It's your right to do so. You should be able to discriminate against people all the time. If you want to be racist, be racist. Like, I'm probably not going to shop at your fucking, your sandwich shop, but, there's nothing, like, there's no reason that I should stop you from discriminating against other people. And there's no reason that I should stop other people from discriminating against you because of your shitty views.
I can agree with that to the extent that if everything was made public, like if we knew that people were scummy and discriminating against people, like not renting to people based on whatever the choice
information
was,
failure.
then I could agree with you because that would make it back to the market. There would be a correction for it, but usually we don't find out about these things ever.
I think we actually find out about them less because they're illegal. I think a lot of people hide their discrimination and just do it anyways, like Wachovia with black people and loans for houses. They're hiding that shit for 30 fucking years before they got bought by Wells Fargo, right? Dude, I fucking love your camera setup. This moving camera and this like 70s click TV or this 80s TV. I fucking love this setup. It's beautiful.
It's good to see you, by the way. I've looked forward to being on a panel and having a conversation with you for quite a while now.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm around. I haven't bumped into you before.
You're on your debate for a week, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, it just happened that all of the debates that I'd been scheduling all ended up this week. So it's just Monday was Prime Kai's Reverie, and then Tuesday I debated Poly People. Today we're doing this. Tomorrow I'm on the Crucible debating Counterpoints. And then Saturday I'm going to have a conversation, less debate, with Corey Campbell about Canada's healthcare system and go through all the data and stuff. But I like talking with him one-on-one because we get to just nerd out and like have a nice disagreement while looking deep into like into the data and like the methodology and things like that. I mean, you can't really do that with most Twitch streamers. So It's fun talking with him.
Double Shine, your volume is really low. Might be because your mic's up here on your headset, if that's where it's supposed to be.
Let me check.
And then Half Baked, I wanted to point out that your moderator-only text chat is wide open so everybody can see it, and also this panel room is open so people can join, while you're live. And you're muted.
He can hear us, though. Assuming his audio is correct.
Yeah, it is. My fault. So two quick things.
You need to disable permissions to this channel real quick and then give them to us.
Okay.
Just click on the little gear next to this chat.
Yep, I'm in
Go to permissions and then the join permission for everybody. You want to switch that to the X, and then people won't be able to join it. And if you change the view, like to where people can see it, that'll make it so people can't see it either. People will have to join a waiting room, then you can drag them out of the waiting room.
You don't need the whole seeing it thing.
By the way,
holy shit!
Am I super loud now?
No. I had you turned up to 200% from a previous conversation.
Okay.
Really?
Oh
no,
because
last time, do you remember last time for some reason my microphone went super quiet, so I've been trying to figure that out, but hopefully it's
Yes, I do remember that.
Really quick.
Vaguely.
Okay.
Buddy, I see, so on view, I'm changing that to X, right? Boom.
Yeah, that'll make
view doesn't matter, but
this room.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, and then when you say join, I see move members.
It's called connect, I think. For the voice chat, it's connect.
Here we go. Allow members to join the voice chat. Okay, boom. Disabling this. Awesome. All right, so that's now disabled.
And then what you probably want to do is, you already have a waiting room, so that's fine. So now when someone shows up, they can go in the waiting room. Because before this, anybody that joined your Discord quickly could have come in and just started screaming the N-word in the middle of the panel.
Oh, thank you.
Which has happened to me in the early days of streaming. Back when I was a 10 viewer Andy, it's like, oh, we're going to do an open panel. And then the next thing you know, someone's like, N-word, clip that, report to Twitch, and then you're like, oh, fuckers.
Big come up. Thank you very much. How do I move people?
You just left click them and drag them.
Yeah,
you're missing Madam.
Oh, yeah, we do need Madam.
She said she's going to be late.
She said she's working on her hair.
No problem.
Which is a horrible excuse for being late. I work on my hair in the middle of the stream, boys.
We'll fire up at 8, and then she can pop in. Thank y'all, everybody, for joining. I don't know if anybody's already live, but I'm gonna fire it up right at 8.
Yeah, of course I'm live. What kind of rookie goes live? What kind of rookie goes live right as the debate is starting? No, you engage with chat, you get some numbers.
Somebody who just got back from class. That's who. I mean, I could.
Oh yeah, what are you taking?
This was mass media in politics, but
yeah,
it's an elective, so it'll be fun. It's with a bunch of undergrads too, because it's a combo course. I just get more. They give me more shit. But it's funny because I get to listen to all their dumbass takes, which is my favorite part.
That's just undergrad in general. Undergrad in general is basically high school 2.0 at this point. Unless you're in STEM or something.
Yeah, and the thing is STEM always that you're smart, and typically we don't have to encourage those people. It's the people that are on the fringes, the people who end up becoming service workers that are probably smart enough to go and get a degree and then get a job outside of the service or retail industry.
Whoa. Somebody online, I noticed you put on shades. Does that mean there's some glowies in chat that I'm not aware of? Do I need to watch out for the federales?
Oh no, my lights are just really bright when I'm on stream.
Mine too. I I've got 5 different lights, and I kind of angle some upwards so I'm not looking directly at them, and then they're off to the side.
Yeah, I bounce around back and forth, and eventually my eyes they don't like it anymore.
Well, while we're waiting on someone, Half Baked Takes, my chat is who is this? Who's moderating? Blah, blah, blah. Can you tell my chat who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Half Baked Takes. I basically just stream news and analysis of ongoings, mostly American politics, but dabble in, foreign affairs, geopolitics, and shit like that. I'm not going to just be moderating, fair warning. This is just like a group discussion. I'm not going to sit here and try to act like I'm not going to have an opinion or not put my 2 cents in. I'm not going to, jump on anybody like a moderator would, like, unless you're.
So what you're
really,
saying is you're
really,
going to let me run wild. Got it.
Scott, I was literally going to make a point to you. If you start fucking going a little too hard on everybody and you're just dominating,
you mean that I may or may not have gotten prepared for the Andrew Tate discussion?
Should I be turned on right now? Because I'm slightly turned on.
Yeah.
No, I don't really see the Andrew Tate stuff. I'm gonna hopefully everybody has a bunch of hot takes on.
I got a lot of hot takes on Andrew Tate.
So there's that. I'm excited for this first fucking topic.
Whip of Nine Tails?
It's not a whip of nine tails. It's just a regular. I mean, I have riding crop. I wasn't gonna bring like actual BDSM toys on fucking stream.
What's going on with your background? Did you get a green screen?
Yeah, but because I have a co-host and we go through Discord often, and like so much stuff happens through Discord, I've yet to find a good program that will like stream while I'm streaming. You know what I mean? Like I've yet to find anything good to use back here, because most like YouTubers and stuff, they're just using OBS. But because I have a co-host, like 99% of the time I'm actually streaming to Discord, and I haven't found like a good thing to use with the green screen yet. So I'm just repping that black flag of anarchism for now, which is a lot better than my shitty apartment. So.
All right, It's 8. Let's fire her up. All right, we're going to just hop right into this. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Everybody in your chats, thank you. Make sure you pop over, give me a follow at Half Baked Takes on Twitch and YouTube. Go over on Twitter, Todd from HBT. I'm going to read the prompts really quick for the 2 topics that are known. I'm then going to go around, let everybody introduce themselves, and then I'll do the first topic. You don't need to give your opening statement on either of the topics to start. So for tonight, we're going to be talking about the Andrew Tate ban. So some questions to think about on this. Do you agree with the decision made by nearly all social media platforms to remove Tate's professional and personal accounts from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube? Will this removal from the sites help or hurt his brand, his image? Also, is there anything odd about the fact that all of these platforms chose to axe him now? While these sites claim various TOS violations were committed by his account, it would be quite a coincidence if if they all came to that conclusion independently in the same week. Should we be concerned with the apparent coordination of these independent, publicly owned companies? The second topic is going to be, does trust in institutions
Mark, I hate you.
Happy citizens? Here are two depressing facts about the United States. First, the Americans' trust in government and its institutions are at an all-time low. In addition to low faith in its leadership and bureaucracy, Americans are now also more unhappy than ever. These are 2 of the most important aspects in nearly every citizen's life. And we've been seeing a relative decline in both over the course of the past 2 decades. Thus, lawmakers are attempting to identify the problems and possible policy solutions.
Madam's in the waiting room.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. We are going to move her to the server. There we go. See, this is way fucking easier than I thought it would be. I'm a professional streamer. Hello, madam. Thank you for joining us. You know the prompt, so I'm not going to go back at all. I'm just going to wrap this up and then we'll jump into it. Do you believe that these 2 factors have any causal effect upon each other? If so, how? If not, what other factors do you believe are causing this trend? What can be done by the government and its actors to improve these numbers? Is there a breaking point for political institutions where the distrust gets too low and there's no way for it to be retained? And with that, we will go around the room and do introductions. We will start with the most beautiful man on Twitch, Double Shine.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Double Shine TV on Twitch and Twitter. Really excited to be here. We're not giving opening statements yet, right?
No, yeah. Just give your like where you are, who you are, all that shit.
Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitch and Twitter, Double Shine TV. I'm taking a break from streaming right now, but I'm still trying to go on a lot of panels and stuff like that. So appreciate the invite. It's a really good cast today, so pretty excited.
Thank you for coming on. Sad to have you. Over to Scott.
Howdy. I am Fabian Liberty. I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. We're a duo stream anarcho-capitalists. You can find us as Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere. Do debates, do philosophy readings, do a lot of interviews. And this week, apparently, I'm just debating everybody. I'll be on the Crucible tomorrow. And next Wednesday, I'll be debating T-Jump on the ethics and philosophy of socialized healthcare versus free market healthcare. Should be fun.
Awesome. We are going to pass it to Madam Genevieve. Oh, she dipped.
Hi guys, sorry having a slight camera challenge at the moment, but I'll be right back on with
No
you.
problem. I will. You want me to throw it to somebody else?
I can still introduce myself. I am Madam Genevieve. I stream on Twitch. I'm also on a bunch of other platforms across the board. The best place to follow me is on Twitter, where you can find the Linktree link in my bio, and that's going to hook you up with all of my other platforms and pages.
Awesome. Thank you, Madam Genevieve. Over to Erudite.
Hello, my name is NotsoErudite. You can find me under that name everywhere except for on Instagram, where it's NotsoErudite with underscores, but no letters. If you see a number or a letter after my name, it's a scam account. I don't have an OnlyFans, and if you pay for it, you're getting conned. Just so you guys know. Yeah, I do politics. Mostly I do like social cultural stuff, so the Andrew Tate stuff's definitely more up my alley. Comment a lot on dating and relationships and whatnot, but I love science, so the institutions one is pretty important to me as well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Very happy to have you. And last but not least, somebody online.
Thank you very much for letting me be here. I really do appreciate it, Half Bake. I am somebody online here on Twitch and on YouTube as well. I'm trying to get my channel started over on YouTube and start doing a couple of more streams there. On Twitter, I'm some dummy online because that's where I tend to say my dumber things. I also don't have an OnlyFans, though I don't think that anybody had asked. But that's okay. Don't worry about it.
Awesome. Well, now that we have the intros out of the way, we are going to move into the first topic, which none of you were prepared for. So I am curious to see the natural first reaction. Should we encourage men to piss sitting down? We aren't going to spend a ton of time on this, but I am curious if you think we should tell men to stop fucking pissing all over the seat and or floor and just take a seat. All right, I'll pass it over to Double Shine.
I would say that, listen, okay, there's something way too convenient about being able to pee standing up. That I will never ever ask men to take away that right, as long as they clean up after themselves. If you live with any woman in the household, though, and they share the same bathroom as you, please just do them all a favor, get used to it. In college, I lived with female roommates, and I just got used to it. It's really not that big of a deal. They have to do it anyways. So yeah, I would say if you're sharing with a woman, you probably should. Oh, and put the seat down after. That's super important.
Absolutely. That was the only rule I had ever been told until not that long ago. All right, we'll throw it to Fabian Liberty Scott.
You know, I used to be a big fan of standing up while peeing. You know, it's a very manly, masculine thing to do, which is very apropos of our conversation tonight. But, you know, sometime around 22, you know, I got a Prince Albert piercing. And because of that, I could no longer stand up peeing. And so I experienced it a little bit like what it was like by being forced to sit down and pee for so many years. And the combination of a toilet that doesn't have too high of water, right? So your balls don't touch the water and your penis doesn't touch the water, because that can suck, right? Old toilet. Plus a squatty potty and sitting down is the perfect way to use the restroom. It is relaxing. Just like when pooping, you get to check all of your social media. And obviously, as Gen Z becomes so plugged into social media, you know, that's going to be an important aspect of their lives. And so from personal experience, I can say that it is definitively better, and we should encourage men to sit down when they pee. Plus, it's cleaner. You know, it's just a better overall experience. There's just no argument to standing up and peeing except for some old school machismo, and we got to do away with that.
Awesome. All right, we'll throw it over to Madam Genevieve.
Hi, thanks. I personally don't care what position anybody wants to pee in. You know, they can, man can pee sitting, standing, a woman can pee sitting or standing. It really doesn't matter to me. What I think is most important is putting like the actual lid down when you're done before you flush it, because when you flush the toilet, there's going to be all of this particle matter that sprays up in the air, and that's gross. It's going to get, you know, contaminating stuff all over the place. So put the lid down and wash your hands. Other than that, do whatever you want.
All right, over to Erudite.
Well, I don't really know what's going on with all these beta takes, but screw standing and peeing. You should shit and stand at the same time. You should get extra good at accuracy. You know, we've got a militarized nation. Imagine how good you'd be at shooting guns and everything else if you could also aim your asshole to land into the toilet. So honestly, I think you should ban all forms of sitting while committing any of these acts, including sex, by the way.
All right, I knew somebody was going to have a spicy take, and I did not think it was going to be stand while you shit, but thank you so much. All right, over to Buddy.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, no, Erudite, I really do appreciate you bringing some freaking rationality into this place. I didn't want to be the only one to have to say these things. I'm trying to keep things natural around here. I moved out to the wilderness so that I could just open my back door, go for a short walk, and then by the end of it, leave whatever I needed to outside. It fertilizes the plants. That's why we pick the particular places where we place these things. You should always cover things up when you're done with it afterwards so that you don't accidentally, you know, make a stink or accidentally step in something else while you're walking around in the middle of the night or anything. But nature intended for things to operate in a certain way. And I find that it's best if you can try to avoid breaking stride mid-deuce.
So you're saying not just stand and shit, walk and shit. That
Do like
is,
the
helps
animals
if you
do.
kind
That
of
is
run and
the
do a little
fucking
bit of a jump,
Sigma.
but yes.
so that's the Sigma male move, is to walk and shit.
Yes.
All right,
It's kind of like a
enough.
Mario jump.
Alright.
One arm goes up, you lift up your knee, you know?
All right, no, I'm not gonna. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this. I just was kind of introduced to this idea. I fucking can't believe I've spent 26 years of my life you know, and this only goes for at home. Like, if you're at a fucking public restroom, like, yeah, I get it. You don't want to fucking sit down. However, if I'm in the luxury of my own home, I'm fucking sitting down if I can. And then also, middle of the night, fucking that is when it's the most clutch. You don't turn the lights on, you just pop a squat. But, all right, I'm glad to have some data on this thing sitting down. All right, we're going to move over to the Andrew Tate discussion, where I think we're going to have a little bit more...
Just opening statements.
A little bit more to say.
I appreciate it.
We're going to go in reverse order on this one. We are going to start with somebody online. You can start us off.
So typically speaking, I'm pretty anti-deplatforming. Misogyny aside, I don't think that removing people from their platform or removing someone's platform from them is ever the appropriate response, especially when it's coming from the system. Now that we've got like kind of a coordinated appearing effort by all of these companies working together to kind of take this individual down simultaneously, I feel like we're feeding into these crazy right-wing conspiracy theories that there's some Illuminati controlling everything, and I don't need anybody looking into it anymore. Please ignore us.
Awesome. We will pass it to Erudite.
Yeah, in general, I can sympathize with it. I think deplatforming, originally it served, the main purpose that it served was actually disrupting communications within like terrorist cell groups, which it's actually pretty effective at doing that. So that's based. The issue is that now we've switched to using deplatforming to get rid of bad ideas. And that was never the purpose of it when it was originally created, and it doesn't seem to do that still. Andrew Tate is a particularly weird one because as much of a piece of shit as I think he is in a lot of ways, I think he communicates really, really noxious, horrible ideas. Most of his social media presence is actually run and driven by random fans in the war room. Like there's the whole MLM algorithm devoted to making clips of him and creating it. So most of the channels that were taken down weren't even the main channels that like promote his stuff and his ideas. So his ideas are still proliferating everywhere. I've noticed on YouTube you can no longer use Andrew Tate as like a title in your video. The issue is that like this was like maybe one of the dumbest deplatforms I've seen because the ideas are still there, and literally he didn't really use his platforms as much as other people create his content and generate platforms. So this is a particularly strange one to me. I can sympathize with like the goal, but the problem is that the goal was never being met by deplatforming anyways. So yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Genevieve.
Thanks. I do pretty much agree with what was said by the two prior panelists. I think that using depaneling or cancel culture to stop a bad idea is completely ineffective. I don't think it works. I think we've seen that multiple times. It kind of pushes it into like a special niche market where they're still sharing ideas, but maybe just with more of like an echo chamber type situation. I do think that occasional bans or deplatforming is appropriate, but only in like super specific situations, and this doesn't seem to be one as far as I can tell. It's not been like a very specific identification as far as what exactly was violated per the TOS. So in general, I think that this was probably a poor decision.
All right, we'll throw it over to Scott.
Yeah, so first, I just want to say that Hope Not Hate has taken credit for deplatforming him. It's not like a question of if this was a coordinated attack to get him removed from every single platform. It just was, because Hope Not Hate has taken credit for it, and no one has challenged that, including Andrew Tate in his video upload to Tate Bible. So I think it's really concerning that, you know, we attack someone because we don't like their ideas, and then we have, you know, such horrible rulings of Section 230. If you read Thomas's kind of cert of denial in terms of like how the lower courts interpret Section 230, and utilize these platforms as editorial pieces where they get to pick and choose the ideas that they like. They have incredibly vague adhesion contracts that they don't follow. And so what I think the only real recourse here is that these companies should be sued for millions of dollars, and they should have to pay that money to Andrew Tate. They should have to publicly apologize in order to like get restitution for the damages that they've done. And then we can have a conversation, I think, if you like his ideas or whether or not you think that misogyny is acceptable. I don't really understand this idea that his ideas aren't allowed on platform, but like hardcore feminist ideas are, or like terrorist organizations are, or like, you know, radical communist organizations are, or like Antifa is allowed. Like, it's very clear that, you know, that there's a balance issue here where you have radical leftist ideologies, many of which are murderous organizations in terms of their philosophy. And yet if someone says too many mean things about women, it's like, oh my God, the children are watching him and they're not being well enough indoctrinated in our schools. The UK government is crying because we've got to fix this. I think it's all bullshit. And we know it's political because it's literally advertised as political. And I think anybody that believes in speech or in freedom, even libertarians that think private companies should have the right to do this, can take a contract law perspective and come to the conclusion that this should never have happened. And these companies need to pay restitution immediately and apologize.
All right, over to Double Shine TV.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to Andrew Tate, I definitely disagree with him being deplatformed, and I also disagree.
Fuck, now he's quiet again.
Which it was done. There's some talks about his past with, you know, sexual assault allegations, or beating women, trafficking, like things like that. But I haven't really seen I haven't seen that as like the reason why they're banning him. It seems like it's this general ban for misogynistic comments, which I understand. I think you can probably make the case that misogyny is like a hateful ideology, but when so many people believe what he's saying, or at least things adjacent, I don't think it's a good idea to push these people off of platforms. Because while you're decreasing their reach, you're also emboldening the viewer base that already exists. And these ideas are not like revolutionary or anything like that. The red pill has existed for many, many years. It's going to come back in different forms. And you can just look at Andrew Tate's few debates, and his ideas, they crumble under any pressure or pushback. So it's a little ridiculous to me that like people would say, we can't challenge this. We have to just push it away and just let him preach to his own choir. Because I don't think that's helping. You're just going to see more people migrating to those platforms. Finally, one thing about this like Illuminati of social media companies all like working together. I think it's easy to fall for that trap, but realistically, I think these social media companies, once one takes the initiative, so in this case, Meta banned him from Facebook and Instagram, there's a lot of pressure on these other companies to ban him as well, because nobody wants to be like the last social media company that's like essentially harboring this controversial person. Twitch right now is actually under flame because they haven't technically banned him yet, so he's still showing up on other people's streams. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Twitch follows suit just because they don't want to be seen as the person who's like harboring him.
All right. So it seems like the more interesting conversation to get into in this group, because from my understanding, does everybody then agree that it was probably not a good thing that it's not a good thing that they banned him? He probably should be on these platforms. Yeah. So, okay, to make sure this isn't an intellectual circle jerk, let's talk about the coordination of these sites to bring him down, because I do think there's some blood to be spilled there. Does anybody kind of want have any some Scott? I'm sure you have plenty of very strong feelings.
I think I might take this in a different direction. What I want to say is that terms of service doesn't matter. Terms of service is a made-up agreement that no site follows in any example, right? Like Twitch's terms of service, non-existent. YouTube, all of them, they don't exist. They only exist if you egregiously go outside of the bounds, right? So if someone in here, just some white person starts screaming at a black person and starts calling them the N-word, yeah, you're going to get banned, right? But there's a massive amount of gray area. What actually gets you banned is when these websites, when you make a big stink and you get a mass reported, and the people that are in charge of trying to go through those reports don't feel like going through those reports, so they find one that's technically violating the whatever their TOS is, and then they ban you so they don't have to go through 400 reports. And the second one is if news organizations or journalists or media in some regard go after you, and the company, which is a corporation that has to make a profit, or at least, in maybe not YouTube's case, but in most of the other cases, they have to make a profit. What they do is they realize that their advertiser revenue might be in trouble if they don't ban this person that the media is calling to ban for. And you see this over and over again, right? Like how many times has Destiny done horrible, said things that are obviously TOS and didn't get in trouble? But the moment that media started reporting on shit, all of a sudden Destiny's permagon, right? It's the influence of the media and the fear that it's going to hurt the advertiser bottom line that I think really does that. And that's why Hope Not Hate specifically targeted Andrew Tate as he was getting more popular to get him banned everywhere. And they did so successfully by, threatening these companies with, bad media attention and hate campaigns to hurt their bottom line and their revenue unless they did something.
I think I would agree with that. I'm just I'm not really sure, isn't that okay for a company if they don't want to feel like they have immense pressure from advertisers or from their viewer base? If they're getting pushback on a certain person, obviously you'd expect them to take some action. To me, I think the bigger problem is just how broad the TOS is, where hate speech, almost anything can be considered hate speech, and they could just always refer to that same rule.
Well, yeah, no, I agree. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna say-
I was just going to say briefly, I think that it's kind of a broader problem across multi-platforms that the TOS are so vague and that they are interpreted and enforced seemingly in an inconsistent way. I think that's kind of unfair.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, like the broadness of the contract, the reason the broadness of the contract is legally such a big issue is because, you know, if I sign a contract where I am, let's say, well, I'm an affiliate, right? Like I'm getting paid, right? And so if I'm signing an adhesion agreement and that adhesion agreement, because like I don't get to change the terms of the contract. You do a little bit when you're partner, but for the most part, you either sign it or you don't sign it. So it's an adhesion contract. And so there are basically 4 things that undo a contract under English common law, contract law, right? There's duress, which doesn't apply here. There's illegality, which doesn't really apply here. There's undue influence, which you'd need a monopoly on like all social media really for that to apply. And then there's unconscionable. Now, I would argue that these are unconscionable contracts because they're so vague in what is and isn't hate speech that it's not actually possible for you to remain in the lines of TOS. It really just means that once you piss off a journalist or once you get big enough and you start making waves and they're worried, they're just going to fire you and void their own contract. And I think Section 230 is being improperly looked at in the lower court's ruling. And what we need to do is we need to open up lawsuits to these companies so that they clean up their contract. So it's very explicit when you join, you can't say this, you can say that.
The issue with like TOS and policy, like if I look like more from like an ethics standpoint, which is a similar like form of like codified practice, is like when really explicit language is used, there can be risk of like over prosecuting, because then essentially like, well, that's the rules, and there's a lot less wiggle room for case by case like determination, and so like we kind of have like these 2 trade-offs. And when it comes to something like TOS and hate speech, it feels like our society hasn't even like fully agreed what some of these words means. Like I know like in a legal sense, but the issue is that like when we're talking about social media, we're not talking about the legal form of hate speech. Otherwise we'd be reporting these people to the police or like charging them with something. What we're talking about is like,
well, we're in America.
Version. Yeah, what we're talking about is like some codified version of like internet viewed hate speech, which is less like it's left ambiguous for a reason. And so like I understand like the desire to make like more of it explicit so that we have like certain boundaries, but I can understand why they'd be gray. The issue for me is actually that when they do ban somebody, they still use vague language in explaining the ban. And I think it would be much more helpful, like in the case of like when Steven was banned, it would have been much more helpful if we just knew explicitly why he was banned, because the reason that they cited was vague, didn't seem to have to do with anything. And it was around a time when there was like a lot of tension going on with him and other communities. So it was like, is it this thing that you're saying, or is it this other thing potentially? Is it like mass reporting? And so like I can understand the desire for having some level of like ambiguous language because it allows like some level of discrimination in like case by case judgment. The issue is that you have to be really explicit when somebody is banned, why precisely that they were banned.
I think that is a really good point, and I completely agree. If we don't know why someone was banned, then we're not able to, ideally, right, in an ideal situation, we want to avoid that behavior ourselves in the future. We want to be able to set an example that action isn't allowable, that will cause you to be banned. But if we're not identifying clearly what it is, then it just creates a lot more confusion, and then we get these conspiracy theories that are happening in reaction as well.
I think you can also look at Jack Dorsey's statements on what he wanted to do before he was kind of pushed out of Twitter, right? At least, I mean, he wasn't pushed out like legally speaking and ownership wise, but in terms of some of the decision making, he was very clearly kind of pushed to the side a little bit. And, you know, Jack Dorsey talked about banning people in an educational way. Like he wanted a pathway to bring people back to Twitter. And what we have instead is we have this kind of this permaban system. And sometimes if someone makes the platform enough money, they kind of just let them come back. You see this with Vosh, right? And in Twitch, you know, he got banned for like the C word discourse. And then they just kind of randomly decided to bring him back, right? Whereas, you know, I think, you know, if we had a better system that said, you know, look, there is no such thing as a permaban unless it's a 3 strikes you're out situation. It's you're banned for, you know, 3 months and then you have to like acknowledge this explicit thing, not only would it be educational to everyone else on the platform of like what it is that they did, but we could also stop dealing with the Streisand effect, right? Where like Alex Jones gets banned and, you know, he's got 11.7 million
But
hits
do
to
you
his
believe that-
website despite him being banned, right? Like
Scott,
he's stronger than ever because of it.
Wait, so you would say that a person like Alex Jones was not negatively impacted by his removal from these sites?
I can think
It
two things at the
destroyed him.
same time. I can think two things at the same time and still think that like all of these companies need to pay restitution to him, and that he should be returned, while also thinking that in terms of what policies they adopt in terms of banning, like if someone puts child porn on a website, right? That's an obvious reason to ban. Like I'm not so much of a free speech advocate that I think that like, you know, you shouldn't be able to ban anybody for any reason. I can put forward a better model that would be more helpful to political discourse while also still holding the opinion that none of these companies are following contract law in any natural rights perspective.
I
guess.
think I just disagree that like taking people off platforms necessarily like helps them. Sure, we can quote Alex Jones, but we also have no idea how successful Alex Jones would have been in a world where he was
True.
streaming to all of these platforms. And it seems like, you know, if you compare other people, like Milo, for example, he was someone who was making waves, and then he basically got banned everywhere and kind of disappeared off the planet.
Say the same thing about Red Ice TV.
Real quick,
It's really
go
dependent
ahead.
on like what kind of actor they are, right? Like so like Nick Fuentes got banned off of everything, but it seems like it hasn't too dramatically slowed or affected him. But that's because he's like actively, like to some degree, like an activist who's trying to be boots on the ground, who is trying to influence voting. Whereas like Alex Jones, for all of like the crazy bullshit that he was doing, he wasn't really an activist. He wasn't really trying to like make a big splash or like change the way that voters were doing. He just like wanted to tell people information that like, in fairness, was wrong to make money. But like
Hashtag Alex Jones was right.
when you deplatform somebody like Alex Jones, you basically crush them because all they're really doing is a job. When you deplatform somebody like Nick Fuentes, all you do is make a martyr and you embolden the soldiers that they're like already accruing under them, right? So like,
Yes.
I can, I'll stop there.
No, I wanted to add to
Just
that.
like fuel to the fire that, like,
Yeah, I wanted to.
Yeah.
I want to add to that. One of the reasons Milo Yiannopoulos is a bad example is because it was mostly his own people, his own audience that was calling for his canceling, because he had cultivated a conservative audience and then went on Joe Rogan kind of with like a pro, like trying to like be honest about the LGBT community and the fact that, you know, young gay men often feel ostracized by their family and they end up finding like leather daddies and shit to bring them into the gay community. And so he's kind of giving a pro pedophilia, or at the very least you could say like hebophilia, a phebophilia kind of like stance here. And like that pissed off conservatives. So part of his crashing and burning was that he pissed off his own audience. And that was part of his canceling, not so much the left canceling
He
him.
wasn't even canceled though. That's the issue. Is he just killed his
Right.
viewer base? Like
Right,
that
but-
wasn't that was
yeah.
Milo's different than Alex, where Alex was actively canceled, right?
I think
Tate
Red
was
Ice
actively
TV is a
canceled.
better example. Red Ice TV, which was like straddling the line of like ethno-nationalism, white supremacist views on YouTube. And then they were forced to BitChute and their BitChute channel died. And that was from them being deplatformed. But the other thing I want to say, I wanted to add on to the martyr thing, right, is that part of the problem is the unwillingness of certain individuals to engage with these ideas, right? With Andrew Tate, for example, he was so bad at presenting his opinions that like Hassan Piker made him look stupid. And if Hassan Piker makes you look stupid, you're an idiot. Like just full blown, like Hassan Piker has room temperature IQ. We all know this. He's not like good at debating. And yet most people that watched that came away with the fact that like Hassan Piker won that debate. You know, some of it.
I don't know if
He just
that's
he
fully
memed
true
and,
though.
like, made fun of him.
Because we did see like Tate continue to further grow and explode in popularity. The issue
Well,
is that like the
Hassan
way that
also gave him a
Hassan
platform.
destroyed him, the way that Hassan destroyed him is in ways that his viewers don't care about. Like a lot of
Yeah.
because Andrew Tate appeals to kind of this alt-right populist group who's very anti-institution, and so like him kind of hand waving, like Andrew Tate unfortunately played off the loss as best as he possibly could in that situation, which is basically to be like, fucking nerd in your stats, which is dumb to most of us here. But if you're anti-institutionalist and like and you're a populist, that might be the best way to come away like still feeling like a Giga Chad. And it seems like it didn't do too much damage to any of his like income or anything. So like
I
guess on the
disagree.
question of the opposite side, what do we do about Andrew Tate folks who are like willing to lie and con people to spread his message?
I disagree because
them?
I think other content creators on the right were also laughing at him and making fun of him. Like Hypocrite, for example, did a video talking about how while technically some of his positions were correct, which you might disagree with, right? He broke down the data on like women driving and men driving and car insurance rates and like showed how poorly he tried to argue his positions and why some of them were just outright wrong and dumb. So I think that it actually did do damage. The problem is that Hassan Piker is also a massive platform. And I think sometimes negative attention, especially with YouTube and Twitter specifically, maybe not so much TikTok and I don't know TikTok
for
as
sure
well.
On TikTok, for sure.
Yeah, I've heard it's true on TikTok, but I haven't looked into it. But
the
like dislikes.
That good is Trump. I mean, Trump just every time he got negative attention, he just used it to launch himself. Like there was very few things that Trump said that he got attacked with that were like grab her by the pussy and all sorts of like statements that he made where he was like calling like Mexicans like locusts or like rats or something like this. Like he just basically wouldn't defend himself and would just kind of trudge on forward. And it's kind of a view, like it's the Roger Stone principle of like all press is good press as long as your mental health can handle it, basically. And so the issue is like, I disagree with the deplatforming, but I'm sensitive to those who are like angry and basically being like, what do you mean? Like, what else are we supposed to do if we don't deplatform these stupid fucks? Is being like, what do we do? Because we're obviously not dismantling these ideas very effectively. Like it's not working, at least not at a large scale. It doesn't seem.
The martyr issue, right? The martyr issue is something that I think is really important to dig into, because what I don't think many people on the left realize is that when they disassociate from debating and deplatforming, what often happens is people that start to go down like certain like manosphere, MGTOW, red pill communities, and you could say alt-right, but I wouldn't classify Andrew Tate or his audience as alt-right. I don't even know what that word means at this point, other than just an insult journalists and leftists use. It's very vaguely defined. But what ends up happening with some of these people that kind of go down these rabbit holes is that certain ideas are no longer up for discussion. And when those ideas are no longer up for discussion, people find someone that are willing to discuss those ideas. And they bring them up to Facebook, they bring them up to their friends, they bring them up to other social media platforms, and they immediately get called a racist and a bigot. And they go to the other platform and they're willing to discuss these ideas. And eventually what happens is the term racist, bigot, transphobe, all of these things become a badge of honor that says that I'm willing to talk about the things that you're not willing to talk about. I'm willing to tell the truth and you're afraid of the truth. And by banning these people, you make that so much more clear that misogyny is actually just the truth. And we can't pick apart the good ideas from the bad ideas. We just assume that all the ideas are the true ideas because everyone else is afraid of them.
I've been realizing that the left has a big problem where they're losing what I call like the Jim Bro right. These people who are not engaged with politics, but they're not like directly engaged with politics, but boy oh boy do they have opinions on culture war shit, and they will.
This is a nicer panel, boys.
Give them give them a little bit of slack, they're gonna bite. And this
is a conversion panel,
and when you
not a blood sports.
Like Andrew Tate, they speak to them on some level.
Trust the strategy, boys.
If you remove them, it ends up, they end up like feeling like they're also the victim. So it's another one of those situations where I don't want people to have a reason to play the victim card. So I don't know, but again, my opinion has always been the same, that these companies are private entities. They have the right to make decisions on who they want on their platform, who they decide to kick off their platform. They should have clear TOS, but even if they don't have clear TOS, again, this is, they're a private, in the case of a lot of these are publicly owned companies, so they have to do whatever is in the best interest of their shareholders. But most of the time that involves kicking controversial figures off their platform, such as Andrew Tate, such as Alex Jones. So
Yeah, I mean, Amazon's a private company that also has a $600 million contract with the CIA. You know what I mean? Like, Section 230 contract law is not being applied properly. They have certain public protections that allow them to have an oligopoly or a monopsony together on the market. That I think presents a lot of issues with just it's a private company, bro. And also, vague contracts aren't really enforceable contracts, and yet you're not really able to sue them for damages because the lower courts have made it incredibly difficult to actually sue them. I think it's high time that the Supreme Court takes.
Do we want people to be able to sue companies willy-nilly and just like create like unnecessary litigation in a country that like we give a lot of leeway to like private entities? So
you have kind of two options probably. You have a top-down approach or a bottom-up, right? People suing these companies leading to like reform in policy within the companies because they don't want to get sued anymore would be like that kind of bottom-up approach. The issue is that like that can lead to really bad policy sometimes. Or you can do the top-down approach where it's kind of ubiquitous, but then it becomes extremely like a blunt tool that's not very reactive to like unique situations, and then you get like kind of different problems on the other side. But that's kind of like the two solutions that you fundamentally have to dealing with this that I can think of at least.
So in terms of suing these companies, right? If you want to sue, right? Let's say the lower courts are fixed, or let's say a case goes to the Supreme Court and they kind of demand that like, contracts be, explicit and that they're very clear and and your rules that you violated are shown as very clear, et cetera, right? So let's say we get some form of Section 230 reform, which I don't want because Section 230 is fine as it is. It just needs to be interpreted appropriately as per Justice Thomas. But let's say we get that. Well, if you try and sue Twitch, right? Half-baked takes, you can't sue Twitch, right? Like you're not financially able to really do so. And so what's going to happen?
What if I have the financial ability to?
Right. Here's what I'm saying, right? So hypothetically, who's going to be able to sue Twitch? A few relatively really large streamers that are punished will be able to sue Twitch, right? They'll be able to do so, or a class action lawsuit. Now, if a class action lawsuit is picked up by a judge as having merit, then this shows that there's probably a systemic problem, or at the very least close enough to give standing in court to a massive amount of people who've been censored or had their contracts violated unfairly. So I don't think we're just going to have like this runaway willy-nilly system. What I think is going to happen is that companies such as this are going to pick up private insurance from like, a private insurance company, not like a car insurance, right? But like James River Holding Insurance Company, or like that represents Uber, for example, right? And they're going to have like retainers and things like that. And more often than not, people are going to be priced out from suing unless it's a class action lawsuit or it's a really rich person. And those lawsuits are going to cause them to fix their TOS because they don't want those lawsuits. They don't want higher insurance rates. So I just don't see it as a problem bringing it to the market. I think it's a bit of a doomsday idea that like there's going to be lawsuits everywhere and that this is going to somehow destroy these platforms that make billions, or in YouTube's case, hundreds of, millions, or like how much does YouTube make? Like 20, 30 billion?
This is America, dude. If you allow people to sue and give them the opportunity, boy, oh boy, they will fucking sue. They love fucking litigation.
Yeah, but that's not how that works, right? Like they'll have an insurance company that has lawyers on retainer, right? And they file basic briefs like all the time that are quick paperwork. And most of these cases are going to get thrown out of court immediately by the judge for not having standing.
All right. Is there anything else to talk about on this? Because it feels like we're circle jerking a little bit.
Yeah. No, I was literally about to say I'm about to push it on to the next one. All right. So moving to the second topic, let's talk about just the falling apart of. Well, it's mostly American institutions that I'm sure we'll talk about, but a lot of these things go. These are just like across the board, can be applied to any nation, and it should be, I want to keep that in mind when we talk about this. But do we think there is a correlation between good governance or trust in your government and the institutions leading to happy, happy citizens? And then basically what could be done and where's the breaking point on this? We'll start with Madam Genevieve.
All right, thanks. Excuse me. I think that there definitely can be a link between feeling distrustful of your government and overall happiness, because I think that generally ties into feeling dissatisfied with society and your community as well as your government. If you feel like, you're always being told that things are stacked against you, your vote doesn't matter, this, that, and the other, it's inevitably going to be pretty depressing. And I think that unfortunately, a reality of being human is it's a lot easier to lose trust than it is to gain it, right? Like, you can do a bunch of really trustworthy things, and then the second you do something that's perceived as dishonest or something of that nature, then it's really hard to recover from that. And I definitely think that can have an impact on people's overall quality of life.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, we'll pass it over to somebody online.
So, as far as the general institutions that we have in the United States of America, I feel like there has been a general sense that, and this seems to be something that is occurring simultaneously all over the West, that the bureaucratification of all of these systems have created additional levels of complexity in these systems. These layers of complexity have kind of detached most common folks from like the inner workings of these systems and made it to where everyone is so far separated from the way that any of these things actually work that they all have this idea of how things should work in their head, and the way that any of these things actually play out is so far detached from the way that anyone thinks that they should work unless they actually do that for a living, that it just results in mass frustration for everyone. I don't know if there's any like actual solution for this other than like making government smaller and then forcing everybody to be involved in it, or else we go into like some sort of like idiocracy system where the government is really easy, where red button, blue button, give more money, give more food, which one?
All right, we'll throw it over to Erudite.
Sure. I think trust in institutions are on the decrease because there is like deep-seated corruption within a lot of these institutions that are being lied about. And I don't mean this in a conspiratorial way. I mean this in more of like a serious way. For example, if we even like look at like the scientific institution, it's like pretty good overall. But the issue is that like academia is a little bit dishonest about certain things sometimes, right? They're going to be a little bit dishonest about like, the fact that like, oh, the peer review process is great, but there's some inherent biases within it. For example, if it's a significant finding, it's going to get published, but non-significant findings never get published, which means we don't actually know what doesn't work. And so we'll push ideas for years, like changing language for stigma, right? People think that changing language for stigma works. It doesn't work. There's no evidence for this. But then when you look it up, people are like, well, there's no evidence that it doesn't work. It's because the shit doesn't get published. And most you have is editorials being like, can we stop talking about stigmatizing language? It doesn't seem to work very well, right? There's deep-seated corruption with like how both the GOP and Dems have changed the way voting works, the way that they've done multiple things that have kind of eroded the trust in the institution. So people are like increasingly distrustful. And then we have these, honestly, I would argue, disgusting practices of media. I think like media fundamentally is like to blame for a large portion of this. They haven't been making money for years. So like the excuse that like they need to sell you whatever bleeds to like get numbers is insane to me, because they've been below budget for years. But they never tell you good stories. For example, like just recently, we've cleaned up the amount of garbage that equals to like 3 of Texas. Like that much plastic has now been officially removed and is being recycled out of the ocean. But we don't hear about these things. We don't hear about major scientific breakthroughs because it doesn't sell. It's not sexy. It doesn't bleed in its lead. So like there's this combination of like media selling you what you want to hear. There's active misinformation, and then there's active dishonesty as well. And so it's not surprising to me that the trust in the system is at an all-time low, which is crazy because the institutions are working for the most part pretty well. That's why we have the highest quality of living than we've ever had in all of history. So it's like the systems work pretty well. There's some problems, but I don't know why we're lying about the problems that exist. It's so strange to me.
All right, we'll go to Double Shine.
Yeah, so I think that overall, as Erudite just said, establishments, I think it does work really well. I think people have a really hard time conceptualizing the difference between complaints as like the government as like a general thing versus specific stuff. So when you ask them like, oh, is the government failing? They'll probably say yes, but then when you ask about specific stuff, they typically have like a much more positive thing. Same thing can kind of be applied to how when people look at like Senate, when people look at the Senate, they're usually pretty distrustful about it. But when you ask them about their specific senator, they're usually very happy. So it seems like overall people, I think you just kind of get lost in this like generalized view. And then on top of that, you also have this like growing populist movement that has just been kind of rising in the last like 2 or 3 decades, where, you know, everything from, you know, the liberal elite pushing vaccines to like Jews running the bank. There's this huge anti-establishment movement that's been kind of going on. And candidates like Donald Trump, I think, really took advantage of that and sort of legitimized it. They really did challenge the establishment and gave a lot of power to the people who support it. So I think that's why they're so emboldened right now. And they're also just being guided, I think, by the growing presence of, you know, alt media as well. Now, as for whether or not that correlates or, you know, is caused by the overall happiness of people, I would say that there's probably a lot of other reasons why people are less happy in general right now. And if I had to guess, I think that actually causes more distrust in the government, because if things aren't going well for you, I think it's easy to just put that and say, like, the government is failing me.
All right, thank you. Over to Scott.
So first and foremost, I'm super excited that trust in institutions is going down. That is basically my entire goal on Twitch, and what I'm hoping to do with my brand and career is I want the trust in institutions to go down as much as possible, and that is my life goal, is to make America trust the institutions less, because I'm an anarchist. That's what you get when you invite an anarchist. But so I tried to look into the actual data on this, right? And what I found, and I tried to stick to sources that you guys would like, you know, appreciate. So I stuck with Gallup, right? And so there is, you know, CNN recently reported, you know, a new Gallup survey that says that like happiness is at an all-time low, et cetera. But like, how do you measure happiness, right? Do you measure it with eudaimonia? Do you measure it with like hedonistic instantaneous pleasure? Like happiness is a really vague thing. The best metric that I know of is general life satisfaction survey, or general satisfaction with life survey, right? Interestingly enough, general satisfaction with life survey, right? GSLS has been going up, according to Gallup, steadily just going up since the 1970s. In 2020, it actually hit its peak, right? People are more satisfied with their lives over the last 50 years overall. And so I then tried to, I don't have SPSS on my computer anymore because I'm not in grad school anymore and I don't work in like psych research. But, you know, so instead of doing like an ANOVA, I kind of just looked at trust from Gallup over time in the institution of Congress, for example, right? And so there does seem, like I said, I don't know if it's statistically significant because I didn't run the fucking ANOVA. I'm not gonna. It's way too many data points to do by hand with a calculator. You know, but it seems that like when trust in Congress is really low, that life satisfaction does go down a little bit. Now, is it the economic conditions? Is it all these other things? Like it's hard to tell like if that even matters. What I can say from general satisfaction with life survey from Gallup, according to them, you know, the best thing you can do, the number one thing you can do is make $100,000 or more. And you'll be happy, right? Number 2 is vote Republican. That's the best thing you can do to be happy. Next is be married, followed by having only a 4-year college degree. The next one is to be a man, which I find really surprising. The next is postgraduate degree, followed by being in the 18 to 34 bracket, followed by being white, followed by being 55 or up. And then the last 2 that basically bring you over 90% in terms of that surveys is having children, right? And so I think when you see that, you know, religion is collapsing, people aren't having children, you know, there's a lot of these other issues. That might be an issue. Economic instability and sometimes might be an issue. There's a lot of things, but I don't know that I find a really statistically significant. I couldn't find a study that tracked this specifically. Maybe Erudite did. When I was looking for it, I didn't find one. But I don't know that it is statistically significant, and I still would advocate for distrust in institutions. And if I wanted to make people happier, I would say, you know, have children, get married, you know, work on your career, and become conservative. That's the way to be happy, not have trust in the media and government institutions. I think that's a silly thing to even care about because they are corrupt.
All right. Really quick, I'll make mine pretty quick. So I just think good governments can more effectively like create conditions that allow happiness, and allow for people to feel free, and that they have the ability to live their life as they want to. And typically that's done by allowing economic freedom, allowing wealth to grow, having equality, and just allowing that to flourish, and then providing services like healthcare, providing good safety like through policing and the military, social services, fire, shit like that. I think all of these are very important to like feeling like you can be happy and live a happy life. I do think it's important to talk about the distrust in like each other and like with your neighbor. So until we like fix the distrusting of the neighbor, I don't know if we're gonna fix this distrust in government and in institutions. And I will say, Scott, I'm pretty sure it's not crazy high, but there is a significant correlation between good governance and people's general happiness, at least according to a couple different studies I have that I can link to you.
Yeah, if you want to send them over to me. Like I said, I couldn't find like a connection there. But even there, is it that people are sad so they trust the government less, or their lives aren't doing as well so they're mad, or is it the other way around?
I think wealth disparity is probably the biggest thing that we have to talk about in this. I think wealth disparity seems to be one of the biggest predictors that like economists and whatnot can consistently find that predicts like the overall like happiness and quality of like perceived living that people experience, right? So like if the disparity is really huge, which quantitative easing alone and all the bailouts that happened basically made this inevitable. Like
Preach!
And so as wealth disparity grows, people are going to be unhappy because it seems to be the case that what makes us happy is in relativity to those around us, right? So if people are aware that like the richest of the rich are just getting richer and we're not really moving anywhere, that's what's going to be a really big issue and going to make people unhappy, because it seems to be the case that that's just kind of the human condition. We're much more greedy and focused on what others have than just what we have alone.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. One of the studies that I was looking at was making a point that you actually see like this like bell curve, that when you have like a medium level of governance, if you're not doing a great job but you're not doing a bad job, we see like a more equal like disparity between the general happiness of citizens. But then when you have like very, very good governance or very, very bad governance, you see the how people, the general happiness and the equality of happiness change. So like the poorest among us will feel like they're getting screwed, or the richest among us will be feel like they're getting screwed, depending on those governments.
How are these studies defining good governance, right? Because to me, that's an oxymoron.
Well, I know that, but you're also a fucking anarchist, so
right.
I mean,
that's why I'm just asking for the how are you defining good governance?
I know that the anarchist dream doesn't believe this, but most people seem to want some relative structure imposed. Most people don't actually want to impose it themselves. They want somebody else to impose it for them. And if you like the people that you're voting for and you're asked, are you happy, kind of, people will report, yeah, I seem to be decently happy. And then you can also measure it by other metrics. I don't know what his specifically measured.
Right. That
you can't measure good governance.
Yeah, like how are we tracking good governance? I'm skeptical of that.
I can't remember that specific one, but I'm assuming they would have done surveys where they, just general, like, how do you feel that your government is handling this particular
right?
issue?
Right.
Yeah,
so this is where the correlation becomes an issue, right?
There's no way to get but we're
but this is an issue. This is a deep issue.
There's no way to get hard data on a lot of things. That's
right.
That's why it's hard. The
issue is that you can make the argument that when people are economically doing well, right? When they're like, so like I had Delegate Kirk Cox was my AP government teacher, right? And this was before kind of the culture war stuff of like the last 15 years really popped off. And the first day of class, he brings his wallet, right? And he slams his wallet down on the desk and says, this is the most fucking important thing to the voting bloc ever, right? He slams it down and says, if people's wallets are tight, they don't like who's in the government. And if people's wallets are doing well, they tend to like the status quo. And so when you're interviewing not people that are super politically engaged, but normies, right? And you say, well, do you like what the government is doing? Do you think the government's doing a good job? More often than not, that's going to be correlated to how their personal lives are doing, because you don't really see the state. It's known in sociology as the submerged state, right? Like what you see is when the state doesn't fix your potholes in your road, when they don't remove snow fast enough, and when they don't take your trash. That's about the only things you actually really see of the state other than media. And so if they've got money in their bank account and they're doing well, they're going to assume that the government is doing a good job. And if they're poor and broke and they feel like taxes are too high, they're going to assume that the government's doing a bad job. But that's not necessarily good governance. What that is an assumption that because people are doing better in their lives, they have more faith in the institutions because they feel less fucked by the system.
I understand, but you could see where individuals that have more interaction with government, which tend to be lower income individuals, they have more interaction with government officials and government programs and the like. When those government programs are being handled effectively and like the things are running the way that they're supposed to, we see the positivity, or like how people feel about these programs go up, and how people feel about like the bureaucracy behind them, that goes up as well. The problem comes where you have just money pitfalls or programs that aren't actually bringing any benefit to anyone. So
right, but your new argument,
SNAP is a great.
Your new argument is that a certain subset of the poor, right, which is going to have less of an impact on the overall data, right, that interact with the state when welfare is being distributed at a higher rate, that's now your measure of good governance.
Not a higher rate,
or a more effective rate.
When these things are getting to the people that are requesting them, then yes, that would be where we're seeing like higher levels of satisfaction. Yeah, obviously. But also, just because somebody doesn't have these interactions, that doesn't mean they can't view the effectiveness or the quality of a program, correct?
No, of course not. I'm just saying that most people aren't that politically engaged like we are here in Twitch politics. And that what we often find is that when people's lives are doing well, they have more trust in the institutions. And when they're not doing well, they feel like the system is failing them in some regard. And then I would make the argument that the correlation that you're seeing is in the opposite direction, that it's not necessarily good government. It's just whether or not the economy is doing well, better, whether or not jobs are doing well, etc.
But again, so let's take this a step outside of the United States and let's go to like let's go to Togo. Like these trends still hold and their economies are not fluctuating in the same way that you would see like in American economy, where your argument may have some validity, but these trends hold in places like Togo and fucking
do you have data on Togo?
No, that general happiness survey that you were talking about,
Gallup.
The Gallup poll I was talking about was the U.S. one. But I mean, if you have data on it, I'll look at it.
Yeah. Hold on, here. Let me send over the link.
I'm pretty sure Gallup is international, though. It like does everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's just the one I was looking at was tracking U.S. If you have one internationally,
if money is doing better and the economy is doing better, can't you to some degree blame that to some extent on the government doing well and improving things? Like it's not like these things are just like random,
they're not
random exclusive things.
No, for sure. I mean, like, there's going to be some connection, right? Like there's going to be a feedback loop where we're like, a systems theory where one's affecting the other and vice versa. What I'm saying is that like it's difficult to nail down whether or not trust in the institutions is like kind of like has a strong correlation, or even if it has a correlation at I haven't seen a study, but he said he's going to send me one that shows that correlation. But even still, you can talk about that correlation in either way, right? Because the causality there could be simply the economy doing well. And that doesn't mean that the government's doing a great job, right? I mean, how many times have we seen an American president blame their predecessor for a bad economic time and then blame themselves for a good economic time?
Nothing to do, right? If you look at, like, for example,
Right.
like a ton of different like communist and socialist countries, it seems like as soon as this new form of governance comes in, it basically kills their economy pretty much immediately. Like, so these things aren't wholly disconnected. They must be correlated, because it, like, if you have, even if it's just like a random factor like the tides, to some extent, some of them are going to manage the tides better than others necessarily, because that's just how this works. Like, it's not just like a chaotic natural rise and fall. Like, these things are correlated. Obviously the direction of the relationship isn't obvious, but it's probably unidirectional.
Yeah, there is. It may not be the only thing, and there are probably a number of different factors that lead to this, but to look at good governance and look at like people being feeling like they're actually getting something out of their tax dollars, to say that has like no correlation to the happiness that they would feel, that I feel like you're just like, are you being just a contrarian there, Scott? Like,
no, I mean, what I'm saying is, first and foremost, right, lay out my argument as quickly and succinctly as possible. Number one, I believe that the term good governance is oxymoronic if it's not voluntaristic, right? And that's fine. Like, we can skip over that, right? But if the argument is that a better government, right, leads to better outcomes for people, right, and that then people will be more trusting because their government is better, right? Like, I don't know that anyone would necessarily disagree with that. What I'm saying is, how do we measure good governance? What are the actual impacts, and what is having more of an effect here? And what I would argue is that I think it is to take a Marxist analysis, part of it is the material conditions, right? But to step out of the Marxism a little bit, right? I would say that the correlation in terms of trying to argue causality, that good government causes like better happiness, is spurious at best.
Okay, I want to hear from Double Shine, Madam Genevieve, or somebody. Does anybody have any of you guys?
Yeah,
have
so I think like I kind of agree with Scott here. Not on the good governance part necessarily, but I think that when you ask people like, what is the government working, the real question you're asking is the government working for them, right? So I think if they feel good about how their life is going, it seems like that's just like they're gonna probably think better about the government. I definitely agree that the economy is probably one of the biggest things, and while people do like vote on other issues, it does seem that like at least from my experience, and I'm a pretty young person, so I could be wrong here, but perception of the government seems to follow very, very close with like economic boom and bust cycles. Even during Trump, right? I felt like there was a period of time where the economy was actually doing.
Wait, this is
yeah. What I'm saying though is
that
that
institutions isn't the same thing as liking your government.
Yeah, but it seemed like there wasn't as much like distrust in the government, or at least it's not as like vitriolic as it is during like economic downturn. So like during the pandemic, I think you saw a lot more of that when the economy was stagnating a lot harder.
Yeah, one of the biggest recent dips was the 2009 collapse, was both a dip in general life satisfaction as well as the beginning of like just a complete utter decay in trust in Congress, for example. And we saw it again in 92, in 83, and in 80. Let me put that Gallup poll in the group chat for you guys.
The general trends I see have been like around 2001. It's basically been going down and then stagnated.
So you guys feel like the main reason that people distrust their government exclusively is because of money and economy alone?
No, I think it's just I don't think that trust for the government makes people happier. I think that just when people's life is better and they're not affected by different events, or like any kind of like any international issues and things like that, there tends to be, I think, a bigger trust for the government.
Not necessarily though, right? Like it seems. Sorry, I think I'm losing frames. Am I coming through okay?
You're coming through fine.
On
You, like,
on
flicker,
our end.
but you're
On
back.
Discord, yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out because like it seems to me like we're at like a unique precedent. Like we really haven't had a Trump before in America. Like it really hasn't historically happened in the States before. And it seems like he wrote it like around the time that Trump was rising, so was Bernie Sanders, who are like two forms of populists. Now, obviously, very different populists in a million ways, right? But there was these two populists that were growing. Now, obviously, in the Dems, Bernie didn't win, which is probably the biggest fuck up the Dems did, is not spearheading Bernie more, because it was obvious that populism was in. But the fact that Trump existed and was able to, like, for example, incite January 6th or just his entire presidency suggests to me that like distrust in the government feels at a distinctly low period that isn't explained by economics alone, because it feels to me like the economic issue that we're in right now isn't even quite close to where we were at in 2008, which I think was still objectively worse. We might get there, you know, we're well on our way potentially, but it doesn't seem like we're quite as in bad a spot.
Well, so
how would
from
you explain,
2005,
like, economic upturns not leading to, you know, increased happiness if you think that the causal link is
It's
the
not
other
about
way?
happiness, it's about trust in the government.
Sure.
Right,
Well, that's
well,
what I'm saying. But do you think that, like, has trust in the government just always stayed down? Then how have we had like any kind of like general happiness increase, or do you think that's just completely separate?
I think the trust in the government's been decently high. I think for the most part, we trusted our institutions. I think we had gripes and like issues with them, but it seems like now there's this growing belief that not just that the, like, because if I say, yeah, I think there's some corruption going on, I think most people would have agreed with that, even historically to some extent. But now there's a whole other thing where it's like, there's a sinister, nefarious thing going on within these institutions, and you can't trust the actual backbone of them themselves. Like the backbone of these institutions are fundamentally failing and broken from the inside out, which is a whole different thing than saying like I'm worried that there's some corruption going on. Like they're distinctly separate kind of feelings around the government, and I don't think that we've had this sense of like it's dying, it is dead, we're worshiping a carcass of an institution. In the past there were some problems.
I feel like
that's
this
really
is
good point,
definitely a
because-
direct. Oh, I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
I feel like this is directly like related to marketing and the way that our parties seem to be working nowadays. Like this is attached to the like extreme polarization that appears to be occurring. Like the best way to like fail your primary launch is to come out as a moderate conservative or a moderate liberal. Like being on either side of the spectrum, if you're not too far to either extreme, you're immediately going to fail in the polls. Your policies aren't going to be taken up by the base as a whole. Even to some extent, a lot of times the idea of conciliation with people on the other side like makes you viewed kind of as a weak individual. And so this has kind of led to both sides blaming all the problems of society on the ominous figure that is the government, and the corruption and all of the things that muck up and mire the system without actually having to name any individual name. And like this compiling on top of itself for the 60, 70 years that we've had like television media has resulted in everybody hating the ominous the government without actually knowing what the government is.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at how many people like hate Joe Manchin, right? And it's like, well, he's not representing you. He's representing West Virginia, and they fucking love him there. He's been skyrocketing in the polls. So while you can look at him and say like, oh, I think the Senate's failing, the Democratic Party isn't serving me. Well, Joe Manchin, his job isn't really necessarily to serve you if you're a fucking liberal living in like Los Angeles.
Yeah, and that's exactly how this is supposed to work. In that people's misunderstanding of that, yes, are senators and House of Representatives members not supposed to represent their districts?
Well, I would say that, you know, before the 17th Amendment, you know, obviously they were picked by the state government. Right now they are elected by the state. And yes, you could make the argument that Joe Manchin is supposed to represent West Virginia, but I think and while that is technically true from a constitutional point, right? I think Newt Gingrich in his fight, right, in the 94 election against Bill Clinton changed the landscape of what senators represent. socially in America, by focusing federal power and like the RNC platform on local government elections. And so since 1993 into the 94 election, and under the leadership of Newt Gingrich, what we have seen is increasingly people do not actually view their senator as representing them in their state so much as they view them as the federal government representing the interests of the party and of the people and of the nation as a whole.
I would love to see the data on that, because I just don't know.
That was Newt Gingrich's entire plan. Like it was explicitly stated that as his plan to defeat Bill Clinton in the midterm elections.
I mean,
and it's been that way increasingly.
Okay, but you were talking about how people feel about their senators, right? I'm saying I don't give a shit what Newt's plan was. I want to know like what the people view the senator's role as, and I would assume that most people view their senator as somebody that is supposed to be like, not just representing a district like their rep is, but representing the entire state. And
well, no, I agree to a certain point.
I'm for the party. Right, why do we have like Mark Kelly? Why is Mark Kelly a?
What I'm saying is it's not either or. What I'm saying is increasingly we have nationalized our view of Congress, right? And so, if you go back 40 years, there was less of, let's say, a hate against, someone on the HUAC board, maybe if you were a commie or something. But the idea is that, like, how many conservatives do you know have a weird desire and hate against AOC, right? Like, AOC doesn't fucking represent you, dog. Like, she represents New York. And yet she's a federal politician that there's a lot of vitriol and hate towards, because increasingly we see Congress as an institution that's national and not necessarily individuals there representing our state. In fact, if you look at the Civil War, the language actually changed. In 1860, if you asked someone, is the United States of America a good place to live? What they would say is the United States of America are a good place to live, because they never saw the federal government as the U.S. They saw themselves as a Virginian or a Georgian. And afterwards that changed. I'm saying that pattern is continuing.
I'm not okay. And that may be, you may be correct in, down the road in the future, but right now, as it stands, I want to get off the Senate aspect of this.
Yeah, it's fair.
Back to the
it was an aside anyways. It was just, I was just trying to add context. I want to get back
to the institutional aspect of this. Like, I think Erudite, you brought up earlier that like it's this connection between good governance and happiness. It may not be large, but it has to be there on some level. Scott, you can't just say like it's good governance equals the opposite, or that it would be the opposite. What are these other things besides the economy that could possibly lead to happiness then? I just don't understand what would be the other things that, because
I think the government is probably way low on the list of like whether or not a person is happy, right? Like I think their financial success, whether or not they have children, whether or not they're educated, whether or not they're in a happy marriage, all of these things are way like the overwhelming majority of whether or not someone is happy. And we're looking at governance when what's really occurring is a collapse in population growth, a collapse in marriages, a collapse in economic conditions for a lot of people. And that these are the things that I think are far more important than that whether or not the government is working well.
Does anybody have any thoughts to that? I don't want to keep.
I'm still interested to know, I guess with Double Shine, do you think that trust in your institutions is uniquely low and that we're at like a uniquely bad period where there's something sinister or noxious going on, or do you think it's like the same as 2008 and we'll bounce back?
Well, right now from like what I've seen, it seems like public trust is at an all-time low in like basically 30 years. So I don't really know what necessarily caused that. I know like the crime bill in 1994 definitely led to a rise in like increase in government because that was one of the biggest problems they had back then. But it does seem like there is something like uniquely bad right now about the distrust in government. And again, there's probably a lot of reasons why we have distrust in government. I just don't know if, yeah, I think there's a lot of other reasons why there's like a distrust in government that might not be necessarily associated with economic downturns. I just would never say that trust in the government causes more happiness in general on that level.
What do you guys think our institutions are doing well,
Nothing.
other than the ANCAP?
Yeah.
I mean,
What about like our the judicial system, or looking at something like our elections? Like, I know every righty wants to point to our elections having all these problems, but the way everything held up and the way Trump's
Why do
attempts to
conservatives want
undermine
to
all
point
this
to
shit.
that when they have like bar none? Like, it seems like voting's working out pretty well for.
I
the
don't
GOP.
know. I really don't.
Well, I think it's pretty simple, right? We had an election where massive rules were changed, where Texas v.
But people
was it
don't care about
Texas
this. You already
v.
said this.
US,
Normies don't care about this shit, though, Fabian. Like, this isn't.
Well, you
what's
asked
eroding their
specifically why
trust.
You said, why do conservatives talk about voting? So then
Yeah,
I
that's
was
fair.
answering your question, right?
Okay.
Like a lot of them
more interesting
don't.
question is, normies don't care about policy changes. They don't care about any of this shit that, like, maybe an informed person would say is like why we distrust the government. So why are normies increasingly distrusting of our institutions?
Well, I think you
When,
answered
to
it
their
best.
worldview, they don't.
I think-
they don't even know.
I think you answered it best. Right? I honestly, if I was to give like the number one thing, I would say it's probably access to information, right? Like, I think, there was a time where everyone got Walter Cronkite on the TV and kind of gave them like what the news was. And there was kind of one set of news. And
So you
before,
agree with the priests? We should have kept the Bible Latin, basically.
no, I don't agree to that. But I think Walter, I think Buckley v. Vidal, right? And CBS trying to get into the news media slot, and Buckley, the kind of progenitor neocon, in his debates with Vidal, when I think the pivotal moment that really changes a lot of our politics is probably when Vidal tells Buckley, when he calls him a Nazi, a crypto fascist, right? And Buckley gets angry and he says this was the worst mistake he ever made in his life. He gets angry and basically said that he fucking killed Nazis. Don't you dare call me that, or I'll sock you in the mouth. And people went from like boring news to like, holy shit, that this is the most entertaining thing ever, right? And so I think the news media as an institution began to engage in more shock factor. And so we had competitive sources of different forms of bias in news.
Bleed it leads is what's causing it.
Yeah, bleed
I was
it
gonna say-
leads, and then the internet comes out. And so we have so
What
much
about,
more
like, Roger
entertaining.
Stone types? We have Roger Stone types who unironically like are willing to lie publicly all the time and spread active misinformation about people. Like Roger Stone,
I mean,
unabashedly
he's a
has
politician.
admitted to doing this.
I mean, he's
Right,
a
but
politician.
before
They're all
Roger
fucking
Stone-
lying.
It was different. Something
Yes.
different happened with Roger Stone.
I don't know that I buy that. I think the media had a certain obsession with populist uprising in politics and wants to believe that there's something special about Roger Stone when really it's just that, I mean, like, look at JFK.
didn't buy
He
into the
cheated in
populism
his
stuff
fucking
until
primary
Trump.
elections. JFK cheated in his
agree.
primary elections. You know what I mean? Like,
But
politicians
if-
lying through their teeth isn't anything new.
gonna
Yes,
go
but
around
there's
the
a
room.
difference, right? There's actually a really distinct difference between politicians lying through their teeth in the way that everyone knows that politicians do, right? So when your politician says, I'm going to do this when I get elected, everyone's like, sure you are, right? There's those big dreams, like legalizing certain things or making major system reforms.
Or like George Bush Sr., read my lips, no new taxes, and then new taxes.
Yeah, so that was the old form of lying, but it seems like everyone expected that and kind of adjusted their expectations as a result. The difference is after Roger Stone came out, now we have a wholesale other form of lying where it's not these like grand things of like, I'm going to sell you on a dream that you're never going to get. It's like, did you know that this person's a pedophile? No evidence for any of this, no clue that this is real, and then just doubles down and like constantly spreads.
But the media is doing
Roger
this
did it in
too.
a smart way.
Maybe-
It would be a side comment in the middle of an interview, being like, "Oh yeah, but like this guy,
Look at-
Liz Cheney does
Scott,
like weird
really
shit on the
quick.
side. Don't you know that?"
look at hope, not hate in the Andrew Tate thing, just to tie it back to the last one, right? There's this constant campaign against Andrew Tate as a sex trafficker, right? So what is the evidence against Andrew Tate that he's a sex trafficker? It's that he made a comment on a podcast that he is into kinky free use sex, and he didn't feel like being canceled like he was on Big Brother. So he moved to Romania. That's point number one of evidence. And point number two of evidence is that a girl spent the night at his house and then lied to her boyfriend about it. Her boyfriend calls the embassy raids his house, and then they find no evidence of any wrongdoing, and they say, have a good day, right? So, I mean, like the other institutions are doing the exact same shit. And I don't think that this is necessarily something that's magically new. I think there's just a certain ire that the media has in obsessing over populist right that is rising.
So nothing changed after 2016 and the rise of like Trump and how they covered Trump and how they were going about like dude, they used to fucking put a camera on his empty microphone before he spoke and then put a chyron that said Trump to speak. That would get more views and more attention than if fucking somebody actually like John Kerry or fucking Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz spoke at a microphone. You're saying that nothing has changed with in the way that media handles news or political news since Trump?
Are you asking me that? Because that wasn't my claim.
Because of Trump. Yeah, I don't think it changed because of Trump. I think Trump just kind of capitalized on a growing populist movement that's been kind of building in like the last like 15, 20 years.
Even before he was elected, there was Trump derangements in him going on for months and months and for a while. Like, I don't think it changed with Trump. I think it changed with like Robert Stone, and then the acceptance within the system of basically saying like kind of Andrew Tate strategy of being like, you know what? If you lie a little bit, but it's technically not illegal, but you get money or votes in this case for it, then it's kind of okay. And it seems like we've kind of just accepted that and made it okay to do this. This is like this is the same critique I'd have of Andrew Tate. Is like Andrew Tate is the natural conclusion of hustle culture and grind culture. He's necessary in this world.
We saw the same thing with
a little bit.
We saw the same thing with CNN, collaborating with Hillary Clinton's campaign against Bernie Sanders. I don't think Roger Stone.
For 40 years.
Oh my.
Okay, yeah, he was with Nixon. I get it, but what I'm saying is, I don't think it's this magical one figure that changed everything. What I'm saying is, I think that what has changed is the way that the media covers it and our general access to information with the internet. It's so much easier now to see the lies because the media picks winners and losers, right? Towards to whom they want to attack and whom they want to run cover for. And it's not necessarily left wing or right wing, though it does lean left.
The media goes where the eyeballs want it to go. It goes where the fucking the sensational, the fucking the novel. Like Trump.
That's why Trump got so much coverage.
Trump was a fucking unprecedented figure in American politics, and the fucking news media altered it the way that it went about presenting news because of him. And I'm not like, I'm sorry, like to act like he didn't completely change this shit is to be kind of, you're just like lying to yourself. You're acting like
no,
go ahead.
I think you're confusing two things. What I'm saying is that politicians have been doing scummy shit and lying in terms of trust since fucking politicians have existed. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were writing. Listen, and I'll be quick and I'll shut the fuck up and let you argue against it.
In fairness, you've talked for almost 2 hours straight, and poor Madam Genevieve said
right, but he's misinterpreting my opinion, and I just want to correct it.
I want to make it clear though that what I'm saying, if you're bringing up the same point, is that there's a very big difference from the way politicians lied in the past to how suddenly we're okay with them lying now. There is a distinct shift. One of them lied about what they were. Yes, one of them lied about promises. They maybe played off the other guy as being a bad guy. Now we lie about the reality of the world to constituents, and media peddles this.
Thomas Jefferson.
Hey,
Thomas.
Scott, hold on. I want to hear Buddy or
one sentence. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams lied about religion, sex acts, and all kinds of wild and crazy shit. It's nothing new. It's been there since the beginning.
Adam, do you have anything to say? I'd love to hear from you.
I kind of tuned out for a little bit of that because there was so much monologue. I apologize. I have to admit I probably got a
That's
bit
my
lost
fault.
in the weeds
No,
here.
that's my fault. I do apologize.
So I don't know
I'm
if
sorry.
somebody online has anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I do
or,
apologize,
Double
madam.
Shine, if one of you guys were following a little bit
Yeah,
better, I lost my train of thought.
I actually got the opportunity to ask Roger Stone a couple questions during Doobie's AMA that he had on the politics server a little while ago, and it was a this and a that. I think that Roger Stone has done a lot of different things for the political process, particularly in the United States. There have been technological advancements in campaigning, if you will. And there has been a very recent technological advancement that Roger Stone did develop for the purpose of Donald Trump's campaign. And now that that cat has been let out of the bag, so to speak, there is no putting it back in. Now, how revolutionary this new strategy that he developed actually is has yet to be proven. We'll see what goes on from here. But it does seem to have caused an extreme amount of division because this invention of deny everything, sell conspiracy theories, and like ride on them like they're true, and just like float on this like with like saying everything that you need to without saying anything at all to the best of your ability so that you have plausible deniability. And again, I don't want to mischaracterize it and say that it's too bad of a thing, but something has been let out at this point. A new strategy has been brought to the forefront, and there's definitely a change that has resulted because of this. It is kind of a culmination of a lot of different things working together, and it kind of goes back to that thing that I was saying before about bureaucracy and the obfuscation of responsibility that occurs when a system gets more and more complex. And finally, the president at the top has figured out that, wait a minute, I can come in and be the guy that fixes everything and also have no responsibility for anything and not be responsible for anything that goes bad and take responsibility for everything that goes good. This is freaking great marketing. And that's what Roger Stone invented.
Thank you.
This is like, of course, like major characters can shift and change everything after them. This happens all the time, right? Prince Machiavelli is a great example. Like, there sometimes are men who have completely unique, novel ideas that change the landscape of things after them. This is true in every field, whether that's politics, biology, et cetera, et cetera. Like, this is necessarily true, right? No one would say that like Martin Luther King, who started the Protestant Reformation, was just like a highly replaceable, like if it wasn't him, just would have been something else, and it would have been all the same like afterwards. Like, this isn't true. Sometimes major figures do shift things, and there is a distinct shift in what happened maybe it's not Stone, maybe he's copying somebody else. I'm willing to grant you that, but there seems to be something that is different, and it is distinctly different around and post-Trump.
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of that, L, because I myself, was stating that the national focus of senators, was changed by Newt Gingrich in the '93 election, right? That he, radically changed that, and was able to get welfare reform and things like that because of it. I don't know that but the problem is the connection here, right, is that you believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you believe that the distinct political tactic of misinformation was somehow promulgated to a higher rate by Roger Stone, and that this specific kind of change in lying has led to an increase, or let's say a decrease in trust in the institutions from the American populace. Is that your argument?
I think probably there's three things that have happened, right? Roger Stone has probably always been a slimy piece of shit. Probably from the very beginning. It seems that's likely the case, right?
Well, he was a politician.
He's a politician. The issue is that he seemed to notice something that nobody else fucking did, which was the rise of populism, the distrust in institutions, and the explosion of social media. And he realized that his former tactics that had a little bit of potency could revolutionize things. And it resulted in Trump getting elected. It was effective. I'm not saying Stone alone got him elected, but there was three things that have historically never existed all at the same time that he capitalized on and triggered. And again, maybe it's not Stone, maybe Stone's like a puppet for a more sinister actor, maybe it's Bannon, maybe it's somebody else, but something happened that is different because these three things coalesced all at the same time, and we've never dealt with social media technology ever historically, ever, in the way that we have to deal with it now.
Yeah, I
It's
think social media technology is just crazy because I think like you're seeing people interacting with audiences that like 20 years ago they never would have. I mean, just look at how many Canadians are involved with American politics. Like that's pretty unique, I think, to the social media revolution.
It goes the other
Plus
way too.
people-
All right, we supporting Pierre Pelevra.
No, yeah, of course. I'm just saying that like you're able to reach audiences on a national level, and I think that like in doing so, you've also lost a lot of connection to like your local government, to your local communities in general. So it's harder to feel like effects that like are a little bit more closer to you, and instead you just have this general view of the government, and I think it creates a lot of dissent and distrust when you're seeing it on such a national scale.
See, and this is another bigger issue that like we didn't really touch upon because like people's trust in their local government is still pretty high. Like people have a generally good view of like their people working within their city or within their town or whatever. The problem is that people don't look at politics in that way. A lot of times, at least here in America, we think of everything on a federal level. When we think of politics, we think of Congress. We think of like presidential actions or executive orders. I guess reframing how people engage with politics may be what really needs to happen because, at the end of the day, you trust your most people other than people like Scott, trust their local police, trust their local like fucking city administrator, that they're out for their best interest and that they're doing shit in service to the public rather than just to get ahead or as ability to gain fame like so many people think Congress is. I'm gonna go around the room, get last thoughts from everybody, and then we're gonna call it a night on this one. So we'll start with Scott.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, I'm super happy to know that trust in institutions is going down. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that the connection between that and happiness is, missing a lot of factors. And I think that I don't even know that that's necessarily the most important thing. Throughout history, many people have said, and I think it is true, that often people will trade security and, for freedom, right? They will give up those freedoms. And I think that that's not necessarily a good thing for eudaimonia, for happiness at the end of the life or generationally. And so, yeah, I think Andrew Tate obviously shouldn't have been banned. I think it was obviously a coordinated attempt by Hope Not Hate because they claimed victory on that. And, I think we need reform in those regards. And I think that pretty much summarizes my arguments. I'm Fabian Liberty. You can check me out pretty much everywhere, Twitter, Rumble, YouTube. If you type in Fabian Liberty and you look for that black and yellow ANCAP colors with a sheep on it, you'll see me.
Awesome. Thank you. Over to Madam Genevieve.
Thanks. I think really essentially to summarize, I would say it's important to be critical of government. It's important to question, but I think that we have to be careful to not jump to these huge conclusions that because one individual or one branch or one department has
I'm gonna get water, boys. I'll be right back.
And opportunities for us to improve, that we immediately assume everything across the government is all bullshit and shouldn't be trusted. I think that that's a dangerous conclusion to jump to. In regards to Andrew Tate, as mentioned, I think that banning him was a poor choice, or if at the very least the way in which it was communicated was done in a very poor way. I think that we all need to have more transparency in which portions of the TOS are being violated, what rules are being broken, etc., rather than just having like a super vague "they violated TOS" statement. In order for all of us to be able to participate in these platforms more effectively. That's my thoughts on that.
Thank you. No, and I really do appreciate it. You give what people know where they can find you.
Absolutely. I am Madam Genevieve on Twitch and across all platforms, with Twitter being the exception. It's Madam_Genevieve on Twitter. And then you can find my link tree in the bio of that page with all of my different platforms linked there. So check
Thank
it
you.
out. And thanks for having me, Todd.
Absolutely. And I do apologize for not facilitating getting you in more. We'll pass it over to somebody.
Hey, I really do appreciate you having me here. I'm sorry that I ran into a couple of technical difficulties halfway through there and had to disappear, but I really do appreciate you bringing me back in and letting me be here. I look forward to being here in the future. Again, I'm somebody online. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, all the places that are most vital, and you can find videos and things where people talk about things. As far as this particular topic, I think that the two things kind of tie in with one another as far as trust in institutions. I kind of liked what Madam Genevieve was saying before she got out of here, as far as they need to make sure that when people are being banned, when we are denying service to people, they need to be extremely clear with the hows and the whats and the whys, so that it's not creating some ominous, shadowy, unhearing, unfeeling corporation that is controlling everything. And I feel like a lot of our institutions have slowly but surely become more and more like this. It's kind of given everybody the impression, leave me alone so I can do the work that is required to protect you. Our governments and our systems are doing a lot of work to protect us. They're doing a fantastic job at doing the things that they need to do. They need a little bit of help to continue to be improved. This is where I stand against Scott the most, I think, on this, is that I like our institutions. We just need to fix them. And I think that burning them down is a step in the wrong direction.
Thank you so much. We will go over to Double Shine.
Yeah, so real quick,
Reagan.
Double Shine
Ronald
TV
Reagan.
on Twitch and Twitter, maybe YouTube soon if I get off of Twitch, because I don't like inconsistent TOS. So
Yeah, because YouTube's real good with their
I
TOS.
definitely agree that there has been a growing distrust for it, but unfortunately for Scott, it also seems that a lot of people, the majority of people, do want the government to do more. They want the government to be involved. So it seems like there's still hope for like the future of the government, not this abolition of it. I think that the government can do things really, really well. It's just very
Congress's
hard to see
approval
the
rating
effect
is like
of the federal
11%.
government,
Get the fuck out of here.
A small scale on a local
why
level.
not make
So when they
yourself
pass
some
the
extra money?
infrastructure
Sucking
bill,
around neighborhoods.
it's hard to see how that affects you. That it's just so distant that you're not always able to feel those effects. And I think that's where the distrust comes from. Just this general feeling that the government isn't out to serve you, and this feeling that the politicians are just out for themselves. When in reality, the politicians, they are out for themselves. But what they're out for is to get reelected, which requires the trust and the support of the people that they serve.
Definitely. Thank you, Double Shine. And last but not least, we'll throw it over to
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you to whoever just gifted me 20 subs. That was very generous. I want to make sure I publicly thank you for that. Big spender. Yeah, institutions, there's some problems in them. And I think
want 20
fundamentally the
subs.
distrust in the institutions is, to a large portion, the institution's fault. Any of the fuckers watching this shit right now, you're for sure dead. We're all too fat and slow to live the anarchy-capitalist lifestyle. Our systems work. They need to be corrected internally, and problems that have emerged within them need to get fixed. I don't know what that will look like, but civil war and radical dismantling means most of the people you love and value will die, and there's no guarantee that we'll come back to a civilization that values individuality, that allows people to have opinions, that assumes innocent until guilty. What a fucking miracle that is. That will allow you to have any level of representation and governance at all. So don't be too quick to my favorite quote is distrust, question tradition, but distrust the obvious. And a lot of radicals and anarchists are in love with the obvious and not distrusting it enough.
Hey, just real quick, if you want to take me up on that debating of that, since you want to use your whole outro statement to shit on my ideology, I'll take you up on that anytime.
Not just your ideology, in fairness. It would also be radicals who want to dismantle and anarcho-communists. So.
Yeah, well, there's only one ANCAP on the panel, and there's only one anarchist on the panel, so just letting you know. Just letting you know. If you want to defend all of those accusations at some point, you can. My door's open.
you two have fun ripping each other to shreds. I'll just say a famous quote from a man that I disagree with, but was pretty based. Trust, but verify. I'm Half Baked Takes. You can find me on Twitch, YouTube, over on Twitter, Todd from HBT. It was a pleasure. Thank you all for coming on.
Fucking
I really do
will.
appreciate it.
I got 100% survive the NCAP shit, and I'm fat.
I thought it went relatively smoothly. Scott, you kind of talked a lot, but you know what are you gonna do? You know, people jumped in, got their blows in where they were. It was I thought productive relatively. So hopefully we can do it again. These panels are very stressful though. I gotta say, I didn't realize all the crap that was gonna be happening behind the scenes during this. So it's hard to like get your fucking points across when you're not just a panelist. So I do appreciate everybody stopping in. I had like 10 viewers or more throughout the whole thing. So this was a fucking W if there ever was one. All right, we are gonna wrap it up on Hey, yeah, for me, I know that sounds like baby numbers to all of you guys, but yeah, for me that's a good start getting me towards affiliate. All right, I'm out of here. You guys have a great rest of your night, and we'll talk soon.
All right, brother, y'all have a good one.
Bye.
Take care, folks.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.